The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Another day, another case. Officer Miller, a seasoned veteran of the force, took the stand. His white uniform, a symbol of authority, gleamed under the fluorescent lights. He was there to testify against a black woman accused of petty theft. Her name, he claimed, escaped him. He only remembered her face. A face, he insinuated, that was easily associated with criminality. Officer Miller recounted his version of events, his voice a practiced monotone. He described the woman, her alleged actions, his swift response. His words painted a picture of guilt, a picture that seemed all too familiar. The judge listened impassively, her face a mask of neutrality. The jury, a mix of races and backgrounds, absorbed his every word. The air crackled with tension. The defense attorney, a young woman with fire in her eyes, rose to cross-examine. Her questions were sharp, incisive. She chipped away at the officer's narrative, exposing inconsistencies and convenient omissions. With each question, the officer's composure began to falter. His eyes darted around the room, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. He had not expected this level of scrutiny. Officer Miller shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The defense attorney's questions were relentless. They exposed the cracks in his story, the assumptions he had made based on the color of the woman's skin. He felt a growing unease, a prickling at the back of his neck. He had been through this many times before. He knew how to play the part, how to use his authority to command respect and silence dissent. "You claim you remember her face," the defense attorney stated, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "But not her name?" Her tone was sharp, accusatory. Officer Miller stammered, trying to regain control of the narrative. He muttered something about the stress of the situation, the many faces he encountered on a daily basis. Excuses, he realized, that sounded increasingly hollow even to his own ears. The defense attorney pressed on, her gaze unwavering. "Would it surprise you to know," she asked, her voice low and steady, "that I am very familiar with the woman you claim to have apprehended?" A hush fell over the courtroom. The air thickened with anticipation. Officer Miller's heart pounded in his chest. He had a bad feeling about this. The defense attorney paused, letting the silence hang in the air. She turned to face the judge. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I would like to request a brief recess. I believe it is time we clarify a few things." The judge, her curiosity piqued, granted that request. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as people whispered amongst themselves, wondering what this unexpected turn of events meant. As the jury filed out, the defense attorney approached the witness stand. She stood directly in front of Officer Miller, her small frame radiating a power that belied her size. He looked up at her, his face pale, his eyes filled with a dawning comprehension. He had made a terrible mistake. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach. "Officer Miller," the defense attorney said, her voice barely a whisper, but carrying the weight of 1,000 pronouncements of guilt. "Do you recognize me now?" Her voice, though soft, resonated through the courtroom, heavy with the gravity of the situation. The officer's face drained of all color. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound emerged. "Perhaps," the defense attorney continued, her voice rising with controlled anger, "this will jog your memory." She reached for her briefcase, her movements deliberate and measured. She retrieved a file, a knowing smile playing on her lips. She opened it, revealing a photograph. It was a professional headshot, a portrait of the woman standing before him. "This Officer Miller," she said, holding the photograph up for all to see, "is Miss Anya Davis, the state prosecutor. And you, sir, have just committed perjury by lying about her in court." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Officer Miller sat frozen in place, his face ashen. The weight of his actions crashed down upon him. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. The judge, her initial neutrality replaced by a look of shock and anger, banged her gavel, demanding order. The spectators, buzzing with disbelief and outrage, struggled to contain their reactions. Officer Miller, his career hanging by a thread, felt the blood drain from his face. He had stumbled into a nightmare.